Ladies and gentlemen, at the iiWAS 2020 conference, my name is Joseph Küng and I'm from Johannes Kepler University in Linz, Austria. Actually now from my home, I'm in home office and I have the honor to chair this keynote task of Professor Draheim. It's a big pleasure to have got this role. A lot of thanks to the iiWAS program committee who have asked me whether I would be willing to chair this session, and I agreed immediately. So I have the pleasure now to announce Professor Draheim, Professor of Information Systems at Tallinn Technical University, as our second keynote speaker at iiWAS 2020. And as I mentioned, Professor Draheim is full professor of information systems there at Tallinn University of Technology. He studied originally in Berlin, then where he did his master, actually the diploma and the PhD. Then he got a habilitation from the University of Mannheim, and then he had several places. He worked as a scientist at the University of Berlin at the Software Competence Center in Hagenberg, and not only a scientist, but also in the area of managing IT systems at the University of Innsbruck. And since 2016, he is in Tallinn. Today's lecture is on a very, very current and actual topic. It's on e-government ecosystems, and it's on e-services, more than e-services, actually about e-participation, as the title is saying. And here, I guess the whole iiWAS community will get a good chance to hear and learn from experiences from Estonia. I think, as we all know, Estonia is one of the countries who is really leading in providing services for the whole publication in a broad way. So I'm really, now very, very interested to hear your talk, Dirk. So the floor is yours, please.
Thanks a lot. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So let me share the screen.
Mm-hmm. So maybe your voice is a little bit low. If you can increase it a little bit or go closer to the micro, it would be eventually better. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, the slides are visible.
Okay, so I just speak up, and please just remind me when it's not loud enough. I would be glad about that.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be again at the iiWAS conference, the International Conference on Information Integration and Web-Based Application and Services. It's a 22nd conference now, and the topic of information integration is as important as it was never before through digital transformation initiatives that we see in all countries on a large scale. So this year's topic: collecting, processing, analyzing, storing data information to support the human activities. That's what we see all around the world, the need for that. I want to talk about digital transformation. And digital transformation, of course, is more than just e-services for public administration. But still, we need to talk about that. E-government has been important, and e-government always has been connected also to the transformation of the society, to digital transformation. And I want to look very, very concrete to data-related issues, to interoperability, how they are in service of e-government, which is very much in the vein and in the intuition of the iiWAS conference. So, topics. So, as I said, digital transformation is currently undergoing in all the countries. We see major digital transformation initiatives in each country, also in federation of countries. It's the next level of e-government that we also see. Just think about, we have lots of colleagues from Japan here. We have seen huge endeavors in the last year under the name of the smart city. We have seen smart city architectures arising in Japan. So, and I am interested from an information systems viewpoint into these things. So I'm interested in the architecture of e-government ecosystems, but these architectures are complex. They are much more than just technology, as it will turn out, because the e-government ecosystems that we are interested in, they are complex. They are ultra large scale systems. They're actually ultra large scale system landscapes, and they consist of many players, of authorities, of companies, of citizens, and of technological systems. So we need a very deep look into these if we want to engineer such large scale systems. Therefore, we will have a look as an example into the Estonian data exchange layer X-road, but not only, also actually in the Estonian e-government ecosystem, and also in the recently established European initiative Gaia X. What's going on there currently? It's currently founded in September. So I want to have a better understanding of what large-scale IT architecture is and what large-scale IT systems engineering is. And eventually I come up with the notion of data governance architecture. And I suggest that the data governance architecture needs focus when we talk about architecture of e-government ecosystems. Actually, it is a data governance architecture that could be the correct asset and issue to drive e-government architecture initiatives. So what is the so-called digital transformation about? And why is it about e-services and e-participation? So previously we talked about, in the last 3 decades, about e-government. Yeah, so e-government was perceived as mainly about making public administration effective and efficient. But actually, many researchers and also many stakeholders in the public sphere have been also interested into increasing the connection to the citizen, to make him more informed, to make the citizen more involved into government, to participate in better. At the same time, we were talking about the information society already in the 1990s. So from the sectorial viewpoint, you know, society evolved from agricultural, then adding the sector of production, industrial strengths, and adding the sector, deeply adding the sector and making it pervasive of services. So we are traditionally have about the 3 sectors in our societies, with the service sector already having the major chunk of the society. And we started talking about the information society. Is the information sector an entirely new one? Is it disruptive, or is it just a transformed service sector, and so on. We have been asking these questions. But now, in the last 5 years, actually, people stopped talking about e-government. They rather talk about digital government. Yes. So if you look at, this is the same. If you look into academic conferences or at convention where policymakers meet to trigger e-government initiatives, they usually talk about digital government today. And at the same time, we talk about digital transformation. And digital transformation is not only about transforming public administrations, it is about transforming the society as a whole. So we have the same discussion, this duality of public administration improvement and transformation into information society under new names now. What popped up recently is, and massively popped up, is the notion of the smart cities, in particular in the area of Asia, Japan, for example. And if you look, for example, into the Smart City Reference Architecture White Paper of the Cross-Ministerial Strategic Innovation Promotion Program of Japan, if you look deeper in it, it's very much about the e-government topics, like, you know, involving citizens, offering services to citizens. Of course, this makes sense that the smart city notion of smart city is driven from Asia, because the cities in Asia are large and they are small societies in their own right. Of course, what we usually connect with smart city is new kinds of data stemming from sensors. So we deal with IoT data in smart cities. We deal with big data, which makes it even more interesting from the data perspective. And these are also the topic, call it smart city or not. These are actually also the topic that we have in the future in e-government. We need to deal with big data in all its volume, velocity, and we need to deal with sensors and so on. So when we look into e-government, in the purpose of e-government and into the attitude, what e-government is, we say that it is possible to clearly identify two, what we say, narratives, a democratic narrative and a technocratic narrative. Academically, we have investigated actually top 100 publications in the field of e-government. I guess we would come to the, strongly guess that and suggest that we come to the same results when we investigate other artifacts from conventions and media and so on. So we say it's possible to distinguish a democratic narrative with elements such as participation, transparency, open society, anti-corruption, social inclusion, trust in government, trust in privacy. And then there's a technocratic narrative with elements such as cost savings, quality of services, responsiveness, citizen as customer, citizen orientation, service innovation, public-private partnership, economic growth, and anti-fraud. And it is clearly that the technocratic narrative somehow dominated the real projects that we have seen. On the other hand, we have seen stakeholders always dreaming also about increasing this democratic assets in the society through e-government. And also, we see that the technocratic narrative is very much in the vein of what we have called new public management. You know, what has happened in the public administration reforms in the 1980s, mostly in UK and then also in other countries, which is much about treating the citizen as a customer, calling him a customer or calling him taxpayer. It's all about efficiency, effectiveness. Whereas in the democratic narrative, the citizen is always just the citizen. So, for example, in 1997, there's this document, Access America, Re-engineering through Information Technology, the report of the National Performance Review and the Government Information, so of the Technology Services Board, from the Vice President of the United States, Al Gore, and this was pretty much in the, we would say, in the technocratic narrative. Yes. So the concrete actions that have been planned, they were about improving the public access to government services, implementing a nationwide integrated electronic benefits transfer, for example, providing all federal payments using electronic funds transfer, and so on and so forth. And only one out of 13 actions that have been named in the document was about what we call open government data today. So it was about bringing environmental information to the public. And e-participation can be much more. It can be involving people in planning in the municipality, how budgets are spent, for example. It can involve expert citizens in shaping new policies, in policy making, in shaping new law, you know. And here is still a huge potential that can still be exploited in the future. So, for example, Theresa May in 2017, in a personal minute about government transparency and open data, you know, government and transparency of open data is very much in the democratic narrative, but when you look into this document, it sounds more like technocratic viewpoint, efficiency, effectiveness. Yes, such online transparency is crucial to delivering value for money, to cutting waste and inefficiency, and to ensuring every pound of taxpayers' money is spent in the best possible way. So, and this is still now in 2020 or 2019, when we look in concrete projects that we see in countries in Europe, for example, but also in Asia, that e-government is still thought as improving efficiency and effectiveness. Yes. And it's changed a little bit, this attitude with the smart city, because the smart city initiatives always usually put a focus on well-being and on wells and on well-being actually often. Yeah. So when we look at the UN e-government surveys, here we have clearly a balance between this technocratic and democratic values of e-government. I would say we investigate this currently. A master student of us goes through all of the e-government surveys and makes a thematic analysis. So here I would say there's a 50-50 balance between technocratic and democratic values, whereas the first survey was rather in the vein of democratic values, saying in 2001, providing citizens with open communication, enhanced transparency, increased social inclusion and citizen participation, democratic enrichment, and superior governance. Yeah. So I just wanted to create awareness of the opportunities of digital transformation in the society as driven by the state. Here's again a survey that we conducted by Taltech and actually by Mitsubishi Morg, so by Mitsubishi UFG Bank Research Center, PricewaterhouseCoopers and Capgemini. We asked people, will certain digital initiatives, digital transformation initiatives, will they transform the society to a better, in a sense that will they strengthen our democracy, so democratic values, or will they make our governments and economies more effective and efficient? And you see it somehow balanced, the basic e-government is considered rather more on the effectiveness side, and efficiency. Of course, open data goes more to strengthening our democracies. So, the UN e-government survey 2020 sees data as a key resource for government, and it also identifies different approaches among the countries. So very basically, e-government can just be ICT driven. Here, the governments are just influenced by the use of new and existing information and communication technologies. And yeah, what I say, this might be the impression then, but as I see that really successful e-government architectures, of course, engineers in all the areas and understands all the areas, the legal assets, the institutional stack of a society, and the technological assets. So data-informed, data-driven, evidence-based, and then at a higher stage, data-centrics, where the government plays the data and data science at the core of public administration, and data are seen as a key asset and central to government functions and are leveraged for the provision, evaluation, and modification of people-centric services. So through the last sentence, it becomes anchored also in good governance, because if all this is just in service of evaluation and modification of people-centric services, then it's fine. But of course, there's also the risks that states don't read the last sentence, but only where governance place data and data science at the core of public administration. And that data is seen as key asset and central to government functions. Yes. So we have also investigated the Tencent WeChat application, for example, which is a super application in China, which integrates e-government services with social software in the mobile sphere. And you have heard a lot of discourse about this, these things, what are going on in China with these applications, like assessing citizens' behavior and so on. And it's a fair question to ask whether this is still in service of modification of people-centric services. So, different approaches to sharing, linking, and exchanging data and strengthening interoperability. Of course, it's nice to have these dimensions opened by the UN e-Government survey. So they talk about open government data, linked data, data sharing, interoperability, and data exchange, where, for example, interoperability is more seen as a pre-stage of data exchange. And it is good because these terminology is around and it's good to have them in a table, but the problem is at the same time that, again, the complexities of this large-scale e-government ecosystem is not really reflected in such taxonomies. What is interesting for us here is that the data exchange is a category of its own, and that the data exchange platform in Estonia is mentioned as the only data exchange platform in the UN government survey. So yes, the data exchange platform in Estonia is a major enabler for e-government services and can also be an enabler for e-participation alike. But so let's look into that. The Estonian data exchange platform X-Road, and also into the Estonian e-government ecosystem. So I sometimes say X-Road, I sometimes say Crossroad, because today everybody in the communities says X-Road, but the original architect of X-Road is called it Crossroad. Yeah, and it will become clear why in a sec. So the Estonian data exchange platform X-Road, as mentioned in the UN e-Government survey 2020, we have already seen that the data exchange platform in Estonia, X-Road, is administered centrally to interconnect government information systems and databases and allow government authorities and citizens to securely send and receive information over the internet within the limits of their authority. This is a good description. On the other hand, it's also weird. They put focus on saying it is administered centrally, but Estonian stakeholders and Estonian companies that deal with the data exchange platform often put very much emphasize that it is a decentralized system. And here the discussion starts, as I have a slide later, saying centralization is not equal centralization. We need to understand centralization and decentralization along different dimensions institutional, technologically, and so on and so forth. So the point is that X-Road is not only a technology system, it is a compound of legal assets, of management assets, of institutional assets, and surely of technological assets. But it starts that there are regulations in Estonia that explicitly create terminology around X-Road, that explicitly specify roles of institution with respect to X-Road and so on. So the Estonian regulation on X-Road specifies data exchange layer of information systems. X-Road is a technical infrastructure and instance between the members of X-Road, which enables secure online data exchange, ensuring evidential value. So I use official visualizations of X-Road. This is a modern version of the visualization. This is the one that we used here from the Estonian Information Systems Authority like 3 years ago, till 3 years ago. As you can see in that picture, that we have several databases of several authorities and also of companies connected through the public internet to each other, so that they can reuse data assets and that they can enact data interoperability. We need to understand what the systematic efforts are in that, and actually in that picture we can see it a little bit better with the security service in a sec. But still, you know, assets like the timestamper and the certifier are just here like light blue components, but actually they are crucial. So, because with them, we have concrete legal assets specifying which companies and how can act as certification authorities. So all this needs to be anchored with good designed law assets and regulatory assets. And then you need to have concrete institutions and concrete companies and public-private partnership that can enable such data exchange. So it's much more than just technological components. And it is always so when we design information systems that it is not only about understanding the pure technological assets, but of course, the larger, the more complex systems become, the more important becomes this viewpoint and understanding. So what you can see here is another visualization of X-Road. So, but what is X-Road then actually? So it's a hand-egg problem where to start explaining. The best way to explain it is actually to explain it to a certain software component, which is a security server. Yeah. So this security server is an implemented software component that you can download and that you need to install in your organization to conduct data exchange over the X-Road. Actually, you can implement your security server yourself as long as you follow the specified protocol, but nobody does it. Everybody downloads the security server as available. So the point is that what is a security server doing? The security server encrypts and decrypts messages in a standardized format based on SOAP, and at the same time, it allows for access right management. So each organization retains the rights which member of the X-Road community is allowed to access which data services. So each organization launches services, data services, and programs an adapter server to the security server, and henceforth the organizations can communicate with each other. And to make this happen, of course, it needs a public key infrastructure. To have the public key infrastructures, we need a certification authority, and we need legal assets that regulate what are the duties of the certification authority, you know? So we have signature devices, actually hardware components that are, again, you know, under the control and under the surveillance of the certification authority. So this is how the stack actually is established. And moreover, there are organizational assets. So you cannot just launch a web service and an e-service on X-Road. There's an authority, the RIA, where you need to announce which kind of service you're gonna launch, and then there is actually a streamlining process, seeing whether some other authority already has these data assets. So this comes to the data governance principle of the once only principle that we will see later on a slide. So it's a compound of legal assets, of managerial assets, of institutional assets, and of technology assets. Here again, we see it from a slightly other perspective. I just wanted to highlight here that in the end, we have the interoperability that is enabled through the data exchange platform. We have law assets, we have management assets, and through this then, we can enable basic things like e-documents and e-signatures that are also streamlined with e-document exchange facilities. And on top of that, all the e-services are created in Estonia. I have just named a few: iVoting, e-tax, e-health, e-cabinet, e-court, e-school, e-police, e-residency, you know, and everything is then streamlined through an e-portal. So, government as an API, question is here, is X-Road successful? Has X-Road impact? And the answer we can find again in a UN e-Government survey, this time from 2018. So not too old, you know, the UN e-Government survey started in 2001. And then it was somehow every year, and then it switched to biannually. So the last one was 2018. And as you can see, Estonia created X-Road. So here, X below last paragraph, X-Road has made it possible to bring 99% of public services online. On average, 500 million queries per year are made annually using X-Road. Indeed, its use has been estimated to save as many as 800 years of working time. Yes, as you can see, again, this technocratic narrative, yeah, it makes things more effective, more efficient, it saves time. But where are the services that then provide us with participatory budgeting in the municipality and so on? Of course, they can also then turn into services on the X-Road. But we have still lots of opportunities here. iVoting. Actually, in Estonia, we do have full iVoting, not only some electronic supported voting in the polling stations. It is not only e-voting in any sense, it is actually iVoting. So it is possible to vote via internet in Estonia. About the impact, the solution has been equally successful in its rollout to Finland, Azerbaijan, Namibia, as well to the Faroe Islands, and so on and so forth. Furthermore, cross-border digital data exchange has been set up between Estonia and Finland, making X-Road the first cross-border data exchange platform. So actually, we are going into the direction of federation. Yeah, federation is a key issue in the Gaia-X framework that is currently launched by Europe. So we go beyond one single country, we go cross-border, and so we go to federated data exchange. Here again, is where X-Road is used all over the world. It's a map that is continuously updated. So questions about the X-Road architecture. So is X-Road successful? I've answered that in the previous 2 slides. Is X-Road a message-oriented middleware? Does X-Road support consent management? Is X-Road federated? And is X-Road based on blockchain? The latter one was claimed a lot in the international media. So is X-Road a message-oriented middleware? Is it something like an enterprise service bus? You could think that if you look at this picture, yeah, because it's about exchanging data. But what we have here, what we call here in this orange, the Internet X-Road, this is not a man in the middle. This is not a component. This is really just a visualization of the fact that we have defined protocols and we have systematic endeavors in streamlining the services and to cutting down the number of protocols, to standardizing the protocols, to standardizing the way the services are offered to other X-Road members and so on. These efforts are centralized in the sense that there are authorities that care for that. But despite that, we have a totally decentralized architecture. You know, there's nothing like a enterprise service bus. It is not a hub and spoke architecture. This can then, on the other hand, be criticized because it said, yeah, but we need message-oriented middleware features in architectures. Yes, like publish and subscribe. But you know, X-Road sees this as decoupled. Of course, you can build as a service inside the X-Road ecosystem a publish subscribe service. So, for example, it was done with the Document Exchange Center. So this was a service offered by an authority where documents of authorities can be placed and picked by others, by other authorities in a publish subscribe style. So typical message-oriented middleware pattern. Yeah, interestingly enough, this Document Exchange Center is deprecated and now, and document exchange is also done in a purely decentralized communication manner. Would be interesting to investigate that deeper. So, X-Road itself is not a message-oriented middleware. Does X-Road support consent management? This is something that is asked in other countries because consent management is currently, of course, a huge topic. It goes beyond the right to grant and to withdraw consent on data. It is about the systematic consent management of data assets and consent management rights. And no, X-Road itself does not support consent management, but again, components for that can be easily implemented as services on top of X-Road. So is X-Road federated? Itself not, but yes, we have that X-Road is used in federated scenarios and also as we have now with the Nordic Institute of Interoperability Solutions. So it is used as federated in between as Estonia and Finland. So is X-Road based on blockchain? This is a question that usually pops up. So we had a lot of rumble about that in the media. Estonia is a digital republic. Its government is virtual, borderless, blockchained, and secure. Has a tiny post-Soviet nation found the way of the future? So this was in the New Yorker. In 2017. So beyond X-Road, the backbone of Estonia's digital security is a blockchain technology called KSI. But if you read exactly, they do not claim that X-Road is a blockchain. Yeah, but we have seen these claims often in blogs and on conventions. All of this is possible because X-Road is a blockchain technology called KSI. We have that, for example, in that blog. That's not true. Blockchain technology, X-Road is not a blockchain technology. There is a blockchain technology called KSI, and that is used in Estonia, but it is independent from X-Road. Or here, the digital security of the X-Road is a blockchain technology called KSI. So the Nordic Institute of Interoperability Solutions, I mentioned that already. This is the official product owner of X-Road today. It is owned 50% by Estonia, 50% by Finland, exactly to enable the federated X-Road scenario between Estonia and Finland. So they have clarified there's no blockchain technology in X-Road. There are some technology assets that are also used, of course, in blockchain. So for example, the security server audit logs are implemented as Merkle trees, but so you have a bunch just of distributed existing Merkle trees, but they are not, this alone doesn't make it a blockchain, just because it also uses some assets that we have in blockchain technology. So what we do have in Estonia, to clarify that, is a guard-time KSI blockchain. It has also been designed by a Tallinn University, Tallinn University of Technology professor Ahto Buldas, who is also founder of this guard-time company. So it's a document timestamping solution. Of course, document timestamping solutions are mission critical in many organizational contexts. And so it came that this guard-time document timestamping solution is used in the Estonian e-government ecosystem. It is successfully used to secure the e-health registry, the property registry, the succession registry, the digital court system, and the state gazette. Yeah, but it is in a sense organizational. So what it does, it is an audit log as a service. Yes. So organizationally, it is centralized. It is a guard-time service provider that provides that service. But the point is that you are secure against tampering of the data structure, for example, also against tampering by guard-time itself. So what they do is they provide these timestamping data, this data structure where you can put your timestamp documents, and from time to time, and regularly, they post the hash of this data structure, the top hash of this data structure, in a real-world newspaper. With that, of course, then henceforth you have a real-world anchor and have achieved tamper-proofness. The idea goes back to an idea of Bayer, Habner, and Stonetta in 1993. So, as I said, we can glimpse over these slides. The contribution is in making these data structures scalable and performant. So we have seen that the Estonian e-government ecosystem is a compound of technology assets, but also of law assets, institutional assets, and management assets. And that's what large-scale IT architecture is about, and what also large-scale ICT systems engineering is about. And the point is, in understanding good architecture, is that architecture is not an asset in its own right. It serves a purpose, and whenever we have other values than going for solving problems, like having just a nice architecture and so on, we should come back to this important principle of form ever follows function. Of course, if a certain building, for example, has the purpose to impress persons, to be beautiful, then this might be its function. So it's get tricky here, the discussion. But this principle, form ever follows function, sometimes just said, usually just people refer to it as form follows functions, and also falsely they connected to the Bauhaus in Germany, but it is actually earlier than Bauhaus. It was formulated by Louis H. Sullivan, rather in the context of Chicago School of Architecture. Form ever follows functions, and this is a law. So here you see one. He claimed he has phrased this important principle in his article. The tall office building is artistically considered and explained. So here you see on the left side the Wainwright building, architected by Dankmar Adler and Louis Sullivan. So the point is that as much as it's true that we should follow form ever follows function, at the same time we see that in practice we do not follow this principle purely because of another, somehow it's hard to express that, because of economic principles that are also orthogonal to that. So we often craft architectures from available components. So we screen for products that are already there and see which features fit best the solution. And then we have such a composed architectures, but that eventually has to serve maximally its purpose to fulfill best its function. And it's about understanding in how far the components best can contribute best and in the most cost-efficient way, actually, to the overall function, and then to compose these components. So this I call here a sweet spot architecture. And the point is that in reality, we often see these sweet spot architectures. So in reality, we do have component-based software development, right? So at universities, we teach this sometimes a little bit different. We talk about software engineering, we talk about model-driven engineering, again, following this principle, form follows functions, but still. Being more puristic, whereas in reality, we often have component-based software architecture ending up in discussions like enterprise architecture and also IT service management. So sweet spot architecture in building and in civil engineering, classical example is about bridges. When the water is flat, you come up with such an architecture. When the water is deep, you would have such an architecture. When it's somewhere in the middle, you mix. So here's an example from Linz, from the important architect Christopher Alexander, worldwide known actually also to the IT community as founder of the pattern languages that are used in object orientation. So sweet spot architecture is not necessarily beautiful. It is meant to be useful. And here's the example of the Linz Café from 1980 from Christopher Alexander. So, of course, we have seen many waves of technologies in computer science, object orientation, service orientation, cloud computing, blockchains. Here we just see the publication efforts in that. But actually, at least when we are talking about sufficiently large systems and this system landscapes, the ICT engineered systems has to maintain a legal perspective, it has to maintain a management perspective, and it has to maintain a technical perspective. And all these assets need to be designed for each other, through each other. So there are implicit and explicit connections. That's why it's getting so complicated. Yeah. And if we are ultra large scale in the sense that we do the information systems at the nation, at the scale of the nation, at the scale of the society, no later than that, we have to deal with the institutional design of the society. So here we have something that is compiled from Oliver Williamson, who is a Nobel Prize winner in economics with his contributions to transaction costs economics. And one part of his formulation of transaction cost economics is this new institutional economics, the stack. So, you know, it is actually about the institutions in our society, and they need to be analyzed at different levels. So forget about the social theory. This changes very slowly. It's about customs, traditions, norms, and religions. But what we can see is that at a next level, that is also heavyweight, it is about getting the institutional environment right. So it is about polity, judiciary, and bureaucracy. And then only at the next level, governance, we look into the organizations and into the business communications in between organizations. At the lowest level only, it is about really the technology, how it can get the marginal conditions right. So in analyzing actually successful e-government implementations, such a new institutional economics viewpoint should be maintained, as for example also suggested by Köppen and Grönewegen from TU Delft currently. So with all these complex issues in mind, I now turn to a more concrete thing, to the data governance architecture. And what I want to come up with is that it is a data governance architecture that should drive e-government ecosystems architectures, because the data governance architecture is the result of the institutional design of a society. Joseph, I can see you. I have 8 minutes still. Is that right?
Yes, this is what I wanted to tell you. Sorry, please go ahead. You are aware of that. Okay, super.
I tried. I'm aware of that, but I need 5 minutes more. Is that okay?
When I took a look,
bargaining. Okay, let's give me 2 minutes more, but I'll try to be. So data governance principles, you know, let's start. Let's again a hand-egg problem. Let's start. I will be ready on time, Joseph. Don't worry. 8 minutes still. So data governance principles. So the minimal. So we have data governance principles, and they are mainly data protection principles, data quality principles, and the ones only principles. The data protection principles is the minimal principles. So the citizens' data is collected, stored, and processed only for defined purposes and for defined time periods. And data is deleted if the purpose of its storage becomes obsolete. And depending on the data category, of course, the citizen has a right to enforce the deletion of his data. And this makes also the difference to minimality principles with companies. You know, the state wants to have the right, of course, to hold certain data about the citizen. The citizen cannot enforce the deletion of his address and in the population register. So transparency principles: the citizen has a right to know for which purposes and time periods his data is collected, stored, and processed. The consent principle: depending on the data category, the citizen has a right to determine whether his data is stored. Consent can be granted, respectively withdrawn, as opt-in and opt-out. You might ask, why are these consent principles important for the citizens? The state just holds the data that the state needs. No, we want to have a more holistic digital transformation. We want to have public-private partnership. We also want to understand what the companies do. We need to regulate that also actually in the crossroads of the companies and the authorities. And we want to have more rich services that are not only about merely the public administration. We want to have e-participation, so in which citizens volunteer, so they also volunteer with their data in these processes. And then, of course, we need to come up with consent principles and consent management. Of course, what is data governance often in organizations when we consider it in IT? This is more about the data quality principles: accuracy, completeness, consistency, credibility, currentness. But this is also important. This is also important then in e-government scenarios. The once-only principle ensures that citizens and business supply the same information only once to a public administration. And again, on data consent, the relationship between the citizen and the state authorities is different than the relationship is just between a company and its customers, you know. So content management is a systematic effort to enable consent principles, and we need to deal with that more systematically in the future. And the once only principle must not be mixed with data consistency. It appears rather by its definition from the EU as citizens and business supply the same information only once to a public administration, that it seems to be rather a service design principle, but actually it is also a data governance principle. I have not enough time to explain that in depth today. So from that now, from these considerations, I define now what the data governance architecture is. So obviously, each e-government ecosystem has a data governance architecture, which is, and what is it? A data governance architecture maps data assets to accountable legal entities. You know, the population register holds the citizens' data, the police holds the data, and each of the organizations is accountable for the data assets that it holds. And eventually it is a person. It is a police director, police president, sometimes called. It is a administrative director of the, and maybe even the political director of the respective authority, and so on. So in the end, we have accountable persons. And what I say is, if we look deeper in it through the lenses of these institutional analysis, there's a primacy of this institutional design. So there's a primary institutional design of the state authorities, and from that, the data governance architecture follows. Yes. At the same time, there's some degree of freedom in how concrete data governance architecture materializes in two dimensions, in the dimension of IT system interoperability and IT service provision. And now it comes to one crucial point where we can see why this data governance architecture viewpoint is good, because now we can discuss deeply the question of centralization versus decentralization. And often we have such shallow statements that we then, of course, need to take serious in projects, like we cannot use an enterprise service bus implementation because citizens cannot trust a centralized government. The problem is that in such discussions, the arguments are often misleading because they mix technical with organizational arguments at levels that do not fit. So centralization is not equal centralization. Yeah, determining a data steward in the interoperability dimension is different from, for example, determining a data service provider along the provisioning dimension. And that's the claim. If we want to reach major e-government ecosystem architecture, we systematically need to decouple consolidation from each other along the described dimensions of interoperability and provisioning, where actually we need to research better and deeper how to decouple them, and always against the background of well-understood data governance architecture. So just 1 minute look into Gaia X, because we don't know enough about that. Actually, several stakeholders in Estonia will get on board of that. We discuss with them a lot. It has been launched officially in September this year as a non-profit organization in Brussels from 11 German companies and 11 French companies, under the auspices actually of French ministries and German ministries. So Gaia X is said to be the federated data infrastructure for Europe. And the question for us is currently, is it a cloud initiative or is it a data exchange platform? Or is it actually a standardization EDI initiative? And it can be all if you go just through the descriptions, whereas actually in the European media, when you go to the European media, it is very much perceived as just a cloud initiative. yeah, against the dominating cloud provider market of the United States. So as you can see here, Gaia-X, it is a secure federated system that meets the highest standard for digital sovereignty while promoting innovation. So this could be a data exchange platform in the sense of the UN e-Government survey. But if you go here, for example, an open digital ecosystem is needed to enable European companies' business models to compete globally. This ecosystem should allow both the digital sovereignty of cloud services users and scalability of European cloud providers. So this goes more into the direction of enabling cloud and supporting the emergence of European cloud service providers. So needs to be understood better what it is. But it's just an outlook, it's a new initiative, but we already know that it will have lots of funding available. Alone in Germany for use cases in the next year, it's about 200 million euro. So Gaia-X architecture principles, I will skip that. Interesting are the architecture guidelines. As you can see, machine processability. This is very much what the data governance architecture is about. In what the architecture of the data exchange platform X-Road is about. So it is API based. The description of the services themselves are machine readable, but with semantic representation, they go beyond what we currently have, for example, in the data exchange platform X-Road. And it's fair to compare to X-Road again, because it's exactly the one data exchange platform that is mentioned by the UN e-Government survey. So we are talking about adding semantic representation on top of or integrated to the X-Road layer for years now, because it makes a distinction between just being data exchange platform and being a systematic standardization effort in the direction of electronic data interchange, to use the old word, or to say Industry 4.0, to use a new word from Europe, or whatever word you prefer. I still use electronic data interchange as in the 90s for that. So standardized semantic representations, which goes then clearly also much beyond just a cloud technology initiative. So conclusions, the so-called digital transformation is perceived as a key enabler for increasing wealth and well-being by many in politics and media, and in the same way, e-government steadily receives more and more attention. We have been interested in the architecture of e-government ecosystems. And as Louis Sullivan stated, form ever follows function. So what is a function of e-government? Yeah, it should be more than making public administration more efficient and effective. It should be in connecting governments with their citizens. And what is the form of e-government? Government has an institutional design, and this institutional design gains primacy in the architecture of e-government ecosystems. So, the function, the form of the government through its institutional design follows the function of government, and e-government then follows also this institutional design through the data governance architecture. This is what we claim here. So, and I argue that the architecture of e-government ecosystems can be identified essentially with its data governance architecture, which maps data assets to accountable legal entities. And I think that such viewpoint not only helps to analyze existing e-government ecosystem solutions and technologies alike, it might also be a key to shape the next generation of e-government systems. Almost on time, Josef. Thanks a lot for your attention. It was a pleasure to be here.
Dirk, thanks a lot for this really so informative keynote talk here. I really enjoyed somehow getting a insight, not a real insight, but some kind of insight under the surface of e-government in Estonia, how this X-Road is established and is working, and all these things. But more than that, also get all the, how should I say, things that have to be taken into consideration when thinking about e-government, e-services, and e-participation. So yes, the floor, as far as I know, in 10 minutes, the next sessions will start in iiWAS conference. So we have 7 minutes time for questions. Is somebody in the audience who wants to raise a question? So the first question you can raise immediately, just unmuting the micro. The following questions, please announce in the chat, and then I will call you. So no ad hoc first question. Then I would give you again, Dirk, from my side, a floor, because I, by accident, got some information that you in Tallinn Technical University are thinking not only on, let me say, traditional e-services and e-participation, you are thinking also about proactive e-services. So when you have a good basis, when you have a good infrastructure, then as a government, you can act proactively towards the citizen and somehow offer or help them proactively in some services.
Yes, indeed. You know, this is not academically, and it is not an invention from Estonia, but so this is connected to the idea of the live events, which has been discussed long time actually in academia. So you know, we have certain live events. Kid is coming to school, you know, school ends. Why not, you know, turn from pull to push, you know? So I know that a citizen will have a certain need. Why not contact him? A very concrete example is about these technology service checks in Estonia. In Germany, I as a citizen need to be aware of that I need to go to the check, and if I forget about it, I get a fine. You know, actually nothing happens. I can drive around with my car for half a year until a policeman sees that I'm over this, you know, of this maintenance interval, technical check interval, and then I get a fine because I have forgotten. In Estonia, I get an email. Attention, in 2 months you need to go to your maintenance. Yeah, so this is reversing this is proactive. Yeah, the state becomes proactive, understand the needs of the citizen, make some suggestions. For example, if the baby is born, which kind of support he could have, and so on. You know, so it's reverted, and surely Estonia is among the leaders here in implementing these things again, proactive services. And again, it is not only a technology asset, you know, we have regulations in Estonia, which, and this is already good, you know, define what a proactive service is, you know, and on the basis of this, provide some legal clarifications, you know. Maybe some citizen does not want to get all these messages or want to be informed. So these things need to get thought through and needs to be turned into regulations. Yeah.
Okay, Dirk, thank you. Meanwhile, we got a question from Peter Skoda. How do you deal with service depreciation and when a provider can no longer provide the service? Are there any guarantees that the service will exist in the near future? Or, yeah, that was the question. I think you can read it anyhow also in the chat.
I will go to the chat. Oh, just give me a sec. I can't
Okay, so it's about how to deal with service.
No, not systematically. And if the question is about how it is done in Estonia, yes? No.
I guess so. Yeah.
It's not done systematically. It's not approached systematically, that one. No.
Okay. Mr. Skoda, if you want to come into the discussion, just unmute the micro and then eventually, yeah.
If I may, my question was more, okay, so it's not systematically guaranteed, then how you, because in your slide you show that not only the public, but also the private entities sort of can collaborate, then how you promote them, and because then they would probably expect some sort of guarantee when they invest money to collaborate with you or with the government, that the given service does not disappear. And from the other side, is there a possibility that the public sector is using a private service? And then what if the private publishers sort of disappear or close their service? How does the public sector deal with that?
I see the question. I try to get the point, you know. The point, if it is about the core components, like the public key infrastructure and the certification authority, yes. So there are of course service level agreements then between the responsible state authority and the service provider, and everything gets founded by the regulations and the description of the roles. So we had, for example, the Rocker case, you know, where we had this return of the Coppersmith attack vulnerability of the Estonian EID cards. You might have heard about that. It was an issue all over Europe. It was not only in Estonia. Spain was affected, Czechoslovakia, and also in our country, 700,000 cards has been affected. And yeah, I would be glad if I could answer you. What I say is that that still there are the cases. This was in 2017, right? And still the cases at court. You know, state of Estonia against some public-private partnership companies involved in delivering the chips, for example. So, how to address this systematically? By usual measures. You have service level agreements on top of business related framework contracts and so on. But I'm not an expert in that, sorry.
Okay, thank you. I think that the part that you have this agreement was what I've missed, so that makes more sense. Thank you for your answer.
Mm-hmm. Josef, your mic is muted.
Thank you. So there is a second question, but as a chair, I have now to close this session. You have maybe 1 minute to answer this very, very fast, because I think at 15 after 3, the next sessions at iiWAS will start. So the question is about for e-participation, data analysis for citizen voice and communication frameworks with citizens seems important. But if we use social media, it will be restricted by data privacy policies. In Estonia, do you have any effective technology to promote e-participation or governmental citizen collaborations?
In that sense, I need to think about that. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I send you the name or from the chat, and then maybe you can stay in contact with Yohei Seiki.
Exactly. And also here's my email. On the last slide from Taltech, dirk.draheim@taltech.de. You can also approach me with further questions, and if I can't answer myself, which will often be so, we also have, of course, the experts in Estonia where I can connect you with.
Okay, then I would like to close this session with a big applause. I try to do it here in the Zoom way to our keynote presentator, to Professor Draheim. And I wish all the best to you, Dirk, but also to the iiWAS conference organizers and for the rest of the iiWAS conference. So goodbye, all the best to everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye. Josef, I need to go immediately to the session. I'm chair of.
Okay.